Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and welcome back to day number 8 of March Madness. Today's page map sketch comes from July of 2024. I pulled out my Kellybell Designs Fun Floral Festival to document some photos of the Flower and Garden Festival at Epcot. Now I am going to also pull in pieces from the Fun Food Festival and the Nice to Meet You Orange Bird, because for this particular flower and garden, Orange Bird was the mascot. They do tend to switch it up in regards to the different mascots. I used my silhouette print and cut feature to cut out the embellishments for this collection, and I did plan this layout on my Silhouette Design Studio. And sometimes when you are planning things out, it looks proportional on the layout, but then when you print it out, you're like, oh my goodness, that's really big. And that was my thought for this big wooden sign. I will say that it actually does turn out pretty awesome. And I don't know if it is the colors of the collections or the fact that the festivals are always my favorite at Epcot, but I love this layout. I did pull out my inks to ink around the edges. I cut out several of the butterflies to stack on top of that wooden title piece. And something that I thought was really cool was that there are times when the Kellybell Designs creative team creates free digital art for you. So that piece there that has the florals as well as the gardening tools, that is a free element, and I'm going to link it below for you guys. You can head over to Lynn's blog, which is Digital Layouts by 3 Blue-Eyed Babies, and download that piece for free. So if you are wanting to try out some of Kellybell Designs and you're not really sure about whether or not you want to dive into purchasing it, this is a great way to try it out, play around with this piece, and really figure out if it's something that you want to try or not. Like I said, Lynn's blog is posted below if you would like to get that free digital element. Now, I did take some of the pieces from the kit and cut them out separately so that I can layer them up because I prefer that look. I also cut out the spaceship Earth element, and I'm going to stitch on that, and it's chef's kiss. Absolutely turns out so beautifully. So I did zoom in here so that you can see me adding the digital elements on top of that wood title piece. I did add some extra butterflies to the piece itself so that I can pop them up. This piece just had some butterflies that were different colors than the butterflies that were in the kit itself, and I wanted to pop up some butterflies, so I just added a couple before I printed it out and then cut out the extra butterflies to add on top of it. What I decided to do was put some fun foam on the wings of the butterfly and then some liquid adhesive on the body. I did have to use my tweezers to hold down the body of the butterfly so that it would actually adhere to the layout, since it is liquid adhesive and it does take a couple of seconds to actually dry. That look on this layout with the body being flat to the layout and the wings popping up, I just love that look. This is where I'm going to take some of the elements from the kit and add it to Lynn's free digital element. I added the purple flower, the orange flower, as well as a white flower, and then also a pink butterfly. I decided that I wasn't going to cut out the antennas of the butterfly just simply because I knew my silhouette was going to have troubles with that. But I actually think that it turned out really nice because the antennas are actually on the back piece. So it is flat to the embellishment piece, and then it looks like the butterfly's wings are popping up. I did use my pencil to roll up my flowers to give it a little bit extra dimension. And for the white flower, I didn't really have to add a lot of foam adhesive since it was really sitting on top of the purple flower. So I just added a couple of pieces right on the edge that were sticking out and then just adhered it directly to the purple flower. The creative team does a free element quite often, especially when newer collections come out. So you can search on the Facebook group for the collection, and if there is a free element, it would be on the Facebook group, and it's usually linked to one of the creative team members' blog where you can go and download the free image. For the right-hand side of the layout, it does call for a bunch of squares. Some of them are decorative squares and some of them are photos. I do replace a lot of them with the photos. I'm actually only going to have 2 decorative squares. So I did print out the paper for those 2 squares. I'm using this stitched die. If I can find it on scrapbook.com, I'll link it below for you. I love the texture that it gives when you are cutting out squares. So I used it to cut out the pattern paper, but I also used it to cut out my photos, and it gave my photos a small stitched look to the edge of the photos. Of course, I have more photos than what the sketch calls for, so I am actually going to use 2 flip flaps. One of the flip flaps is going to contain 2 photos, and one of the flip flaps is going to contain 1 photo, and then on the back of it is going to be my journaling for this layout. I printed out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in that floral. I love that floral. It's so pretty. The colors are so springish and it's just awesome. I did forget that I was supposed to cut out a second piece because I wanted to make sure that I had 11 inches on the right hand side and then also some on the left hand side. So in a minute, I'm going to go off camera and print another sheet of that. The Tasting Our Way Around the World, that is the one that comes from the Fun Food Festival. This particular kit does focus on the topiaries at Epcot because that is a big part of the flower and garden. But the colors work for this collection as well. And I'm so glad that Kelly was able to coordinate these and make them work for both collections. I'm trying to figure out a way for the papers to match up. They don't match up. They are 2 totally different sheets of paper. I was trying to see if there was any overlap on them. Now, I did pull out this polka dotted paper from Doodlebug's Petite Prints. I really wanted to have the polka dots at the bottom. I felt like that green paper was going to really contrast against the florals at the top. And then I also cut out a 1/2 inch strip of the stripe paper, and I did use my border punch to create a border along the edge of it. I only had to print this sheet out once because I knew that I could get the entire 11 inches on the right hand side and then just cut out a different strip for the left hand side, just like I normally would do with any 12-inch paper. So I do want to remind you that you do not need a wide format printer to use some digital collections. I feel like the amount of paper that I get on this particular layout is pretty significant, and you wouldn't even know that I didn't have a wide format printer. I'm going to pull out my T-square ruler to get all of these papers down, making sure that they are all straight. And as I'm doing that, let me just tell you a little bit about the photos. These photos are from the Flower and Garden Festival last year. Eli and I went. It was a very rainy day. We went after school. And this is something that we do actually quite often where we eat around the world. We'll just go and have dinner there. And while it's not a balanced diet for sure, it's just a fun activity that we get to do as pass holders. So it's usually in the middle of the week when I don't have a full schedule at work. So I can leave work right on time. I run over, I pick up Eli from school, and we head straight to Epcot. Being pass holders for as long as we have come to realize that the festivals do repeat some of their foods, and we're perfectly okay with that because the ones that they tend to repeat are usually the ones that we really enjoy. I did also print out this yellow paper. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but it does have a really light yellow pattern to it, and I'm going to add that over to the left hand side of the layout. Now I did decide to bring in that floral paper over to the far left. I just cut it in half and added it to the top and bottom, and then that yellow paper is going to cover up the seams. For the left hand side of the layout, I'm only going to have 1 photo. The sketch does call for 2 smaller photos, but I decided just to use a full 4x6 photo over on the left. And that's very rare for me to just have 1 photo because I tend to want to have lots of photos on the layout. But even with just having 1 photo on the left, I was able to get 5 photos flat to the layout on the right hand side, and then an additional 3 photos with my flip flaps. So I still was able to get 9 photos on this layout. I'm going to start building up the right hand side of the layout. For that paper that looks like a bush, I'm going to add a butterfly to it. And I really think that that darker green with the purple and blue butterfly on top of it really does add a lot of contrast. I did decide to use that same technique where I'm going to put the fun foam on the wings of the butterfly and then putting liquid adhesive in the center where the body is, using my tweezers to hold that down so that the body is flat to the piece of paper, and then the wings are popping up. And then I'm going to add the rest of the photos down, again, using my T-square ruler to make sure that all of them are straight. I really do like the grid style of this right-hand side of the layout. I think that it offers so much variety because you do have 3x3 size photos. So that's a nice size photo. And then you also have this space over on the far right-hand side where you're able to add a lot of embellishments. And I'm going to add a nice little cluster over to the right. Once I get all the photos down, I'm going to add this blue paper. It has like a small pattern to it. And on top of that, I'm going to add a heart topiary. And then I'm going to add the Tasting Our Way Around the World. I definitely cut these out pretty large. And I like the fact that I can manipulate these digital images. Most of the time when you get images like this on a collection piece, whether it's a sticker sheet or in the embellishment packs, they're usually much smaller, which is fine. I like to add them around the layout as well. But having the digital content gave me the opportunity to make them a little bit larger and make them more of a focal point. Once I got the Tasting Our Way Around the World down, I started to work on the cluster on the right-hand side. I did bring in that topiary that has the Mickey head, and then I also brought in Orange Bird. I wanted to bring in the Orange Bird from the Nice to Meet You Orange Bird kit because over on the left-hand side, we do have a magic shot. They had a bucket of oranges that actually says the Flower and Garden Festival, but then they put a magic shot of Orange Bird on top of it. So I felt like that would tie the two pieces together. I also added a watering can, and then the You Gotta Try This did come from the Fun Food Festival. This is where I'm gonna add in the flip flap with the additional 2 3x3 photos. At this point, I hadn't decided what I was gonna do with that third photo. I wanted to see if I was going to either create another card to add to it, or if I wanted to add my journaling to it. So I just set it to the side for right now. Then I'm going to start working on the left-hand side of the layout. This is that photo that I was telling you about that had the magic shot with Orange Bird. I am going to back it on white cardstock just simply because the left-hand side of the layout is about to get very, very busy, and I didn't want my photo to get lost with all of these really large embellishments. I did decide to ink the edges of that paper with a really pretty blue that matched the blue pattern paper that's over on the right-hand side of the layout. I'm going to lay down that Epcot International Flower and Garden Festival sign as well as Spaceship Earth. And then I'm going to add that free digital element on top of Spaceship Earth. I'm trying to really decide where I want it because I was trying to decide what pattern paper I wanted to stick out of the bottom piece of Spaceship Earth. Once I get that down, I do decide that I want to put the title piece up on Fun Foam, because I did want it to overlap the photo just a little bit, and I knew that I wanted to have some space between the photo and that title piece. I then remembered that I had that little orange that I wanted to add over to the right, so I add that down. That also came from the Nice to Meet You Orange Bird kit. I did add the floral cluster down on top of Spaceship Earth, and I used my pencil to kind of outline where it was going to be because I knew that I was going to do a ton of stitching on this Spaceship Earth, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that was going to be covered up. I did my stitching offline, and I slowed the video down here so that you can see all of that amazing detail on Spaceship Earth. I really do feel like that makes this just pop on this layout. You can see over on the far right of Spaceship Earth is where I did not stitch, and I am going to cover it up with this embellishment cluster. I did use some liquid adhesive as well as my ATG, just simply because I knew that it was going to be a little bumpy with all of that stitching. I had to pull up the Fun Foam on the back of the title piece because I wanted to tuck my photo in underneath it, and I also wanted to tuck my photo in underneath that floral cluster. I then decided to pull out my color boxes in colors to match the florals, and I added a rhinestone to the purple floral as well as the orange one and the pink one. For the white one, I added a sparkly enamel shape, and then I also did add blue rhinestones to the blue florals as well. Then I thought that the title piece could use some rhinestones as well, so I added some pink rhinestones up at the top. I forgot about this flare that I had printed out. It says World Showcase, so I did decide to ink it up and add it to a purple bottle cap and add it over on the left-hand side of the layout. And then I also had this yummy embellishment piece that came from the Nice to Meet You orange bird, and I added that because I wanted to add some of the orange from the orange bird that's on the right-hand side of the layout to kind of tie all of that together. I tried to add this last butterfly, but he just didn't make it to the layout. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did do my journaling offline and I added it to a flip flap. It says, for Eli, the Flower and Garden Festival, like all festivals, is primarily about the food. Even on this particularly rainy day, we had the chance to sample a variety of delicious dishes as we explored the World Showcase. All right, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.